Now our SFF host, Manisha Tank, will join us to moderate a panel of corporate leaders on how they see the future of work changing. She will be joined by Bhairavi Jani, Director of SCA Group of Companies, Gianfranco Casati, CEO of Accenture in Growth Markets, co-founder and co-chief executive officer of Gojek, Kevin Alui, and president of Paytm, Madhur Diora. Let's go now to Manisha and her panel to discuss the future of work.
Hello, I'm Manisha Tank, and on the behalf of the Milken Institute, I want to welcome you to this excellent panel on the future of work. I'm delighted to be hosting today 4 rock stars in their various categories who are going to talk to us not just about what they've experienced over the past year, but what you can expect your future world to look like when it comes to work. Well, full disclosure, I am broadcasting from my bedroom, like a lot of you have been doing, and you've been attending your work meetings or whatever it might be. From this room, I have attended classical Indian dance classes, I have attended parent-teacher meetings, and I have even hosted live broadcasts on an international news network. So it just goes to show there are all sorts of things we've learned this year that we can do that we didn't know before. So with that preamble, let's get into talking about the future of work. That was my experience. We're about to get up to speed on the experience of our 4 panelists. Let me introduce them to you. First of all, Mr. Gianfranco Casati, who is the CEO of Accenture in Growth Markets. He's based here in Singapore, and he has management oversight for a number of areas, covering Asia Pacific, Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America. So I'm really looking forward to getting his perspectives on all of those geographies. We also have with us Bhairavi, who is the director of SCA Group of Companies. She's the chairperson and founder of the IEF Entrepreneurship Foundation. She is also a 4th generation entrepreneur, a developmental enthusiast, and an avid philanthropist. And I can tell you that she is in the mountains, in the Himalayas, near the border of Nepal, India, and China. So joins us from a very remote location today. Also, we have on our panel Kevin Alui, who is the co-founder and co-CEO at Gojek. Gojek doing such big things in the Asia Pacific region. He's an entrepreneur and a man who told the Milken Institute around this time last year that the future is software. Now, I'm wondering whether he still believes in that or whether his perspective over the last year has changed. We also have Madhur Diora, and all of this is in no particular order. He's the president at Paytm, the Indian payment services firm. He is a Citigroup veteran who joined the digital payments company back in 2016. So thank you, all of you, for joining us today. So like I promised, I've told you where I am and what I'm up to and the kind of things that I've experienced this year. Now all of you are going to have to share. I want to start with close to home with you, Gianfranco. You're here in Singapore, just like me. Just share with us some of the positives of your new way of working over the last year.
Thank you, Manisha. And I have to say, I'm in the office because I was at home and planning to have this session from home. And then they started drilling the apartment above me, and I didn't want to have that noise, to share that noise with you. So normally my life is very similar to yours from working from home since quite a few months. We started the emergency in a very serious way in February, March, like any other company. And we had to move thousands of people from office and from client locations to home. And in some instances, we really couldn't do it. And so as part of the first phase of emergency, the discovery has been our resilience and our ability to find out ways to keep going. In example, we negotiated thousands of hotel rooms that were empty, of course, to accommodate some of our employees who couldn't work from home. Since then, fast forward to today, as we have gone through the first peak of the emergency, we've started trying to figure out how to recreate a balance in our life. And so I have to admit, I've gone back to do way more exercising than before. And I have to say, I'm not alone, because I went to buy a bike recently and they laughed at me and said, "Bike? We are run out of bikes here in Singapore. They are all cycling." And this is something that I think is happening, which I would describe as positive: more me time, more attention to ourselves, but in the context of a situation which has many elements of emergency still.
Absolutely. And I think it also brings into focus, doesn't it, the fact that we're all thinking about balance in our lives a lot more perhaps than we did before. With that, and speaking of balance, let's go to the complete end of the other end of the scale. I started in Singapore. Let me go somewhere completely remote. Let's go up to the Himalayas. Bhairavi, checking in with you. So I think this has definitely been a challenging year. You shared with me earlier that due to health reasons, you went up into the mountains. So it's obviously been a challenging year, but tell us a little bit more about your reflections.
Well, actually, Manisha, I think, a couple of years ago when the pollution in Indian capital, New Delhi, started really crossing the heights of severity, my husband and I decided it was time that we spent a couple of months away. And then last year, when this house got ready, we decided to start spending winters here, and everybody in the mountains started laughing because they said nobody comes here in the winters. And we were running away from a climate crisis. So you will, because I'm an asthma patient, and pollution doesn't do very well for my health. And so in a way, a part of my team was used to sort of working remotely with me. But my business is in logistics, in supply chain, and nothing happens offline there. You can't load an aircraft or a ship or a truck online. And so what's been the most, I think, amazing and humbling memory that I have for this year is the human endeavor that I've seen in teammates who, in very difficult circumstances during lockdowns, risking their lives, have stood up to really serve not just a job, but serve the needs of people around themselves. And, because they were probably the only ones allowed to step out with essential services passes, they were the people who ferried things and medicines for their communities and really did much more, I think. And many put their lives on the line. And unfortunately, we did have 2 or 3 employees who got into serious trouble, 2 passed away. Third one is still, facing some very serious after effects. And the courage of their families was very, very heartening in saying that, no, we really felt that we were, for the first time, families of those who fight a war. And that, those who passed on did so in the line of duty. And I think it was a very positive and uplifting moment for me as an entrepreneur to see my team sort of being recognized thus and feel that, collective human spirit.
Well, I'd love to just channel a collective sympathies for all of those families, especially in these difficult times. But how remarkable, as you described, the way that people have pulled through, so many unsung heroes who perhaps now we are singing about that we may not have done before being affected by this pandemic. Okay, I'm going to rein it back to Southeast Asia now, and let's check in with Kevin. Kevin, lovely to talk to you. You are an entrepreneur. You are, running Gojek, I feel like Gojek is taking over Southeast Asia, which is, I'm sure, great feedback for you. But what's it been like over the last year? Because, there are a lot of workers who would have been affected in Indonesia and throughout this region by this pandemic.
Yeah, thanks, Manisha. I feel that, for us, we look at it from a few different dimensions, and we because on one hand, probably the first dimension is we look at it from the perspective of our employees, and from an employee standpoint, I think one of the things similar to what was just discussed is that really it was really heartening to see that during these tough times, everyone really banded together. I think the amount of work that we did around the end of the first quarter and then probably the first half of the second quarter was really tremendous. It's been a very long time since I've seen almost every single part of the company really work nights and weekends to get things done. And a lot of these things are for our internal team members, but also for our external ecosystem. And I'll get into the external ecosystem in a second. But for employees, we really had to think about how to, one, obviously keep them safe. And I believe we were probably the first, or if not among the first companies in Indonesia to actually implement work from home. And we did that, as Gianfranco mentioned, around early March. And we started noticing things over the following months where we saw that one of the interesting phenomena that we noticed during this time is that actually burnout becomes a real issue. I mean, I think some people originally thought that work from home would cause people to slack off, and what we've actually seen is it's actually the opposite, right? People don't know when to tune out because your office is your home, and your home is your office. And so we started implementing policies like no meeting Fridays. So every second week of the month, there's no meetings at all. So people can just focus on deep work, don't end up in a chain of back-to-back Zoom calls, which I believe we're all on these days. And the last Friday of the week is actually a company holiday. Some people choose to take it, some people don't. But whatever you need to do on a Friday, go do your thing. And we've done a lot of these internal initiatives to really respond to the very different stresses that kind of happen during this period. But as one upside, actually, it's not all kind of downside from the perspective of our employees. One upside is that actually, as a distributed company, Gojek actually has offices all across the world. And for the first time, every single employee gets to experience the same culture. Every single employee gets to experience the same closeness, the same cadences as every other. Right. And really thinking about how that creates a much more inclusive environment for a global company has been actually a really big positive. And I'd love to kind of talk about that a little bit more later. But the other two areas I'll kind of quickly go through is, our driver partners. Our drivers are obviously very much hit because lower demand for traveling means that there's just a lot less income to go around. But we've managed to grow other parts of the business. We've invested a lot in creating hygiene checks for our drivers to actually get their temperature checked. I think we were the first ride-hailing company in the world to actually set up physical checks all across the country, make sure that our drivers are healthy. We distributed hand sanitizers all across restaurants and a lot of these driver checkpoints. We've installed protective screens in our cars. So we believe that the resiliency is something that really kind of stands out even during these tough times, and customers and businesses and drivers are really adapting to this new world. And so I think for us it's been a very multifaceted journey. But we have seen, a lot of pros and cons, and I'd love to kind of discuss those in further detail.
Well, we certainly will, and we're looking forward to that. And I think it's worth spotlighting this that you talk about, that the well-being of employees, and this being a year in which we've really understood why well-being matters so much, and why we need to focus on that as we move forward and we look at a future where the demands on us are shifting quite considerably. With that, let me move to Mother, who I believe is in India. And India was so much in the headlines over the last year, of course, among those top 3 countries with the highest number of COVID-19 cases. Of course, those numbers are now coming down, but everybody remembers those headlines about people who were stranded, many transient workers who were stranded. But what emerged over the last year was how digital finance in India has actually come forth as a backbone to get payments to people, to get support to people, to facilitate entrepreneurs who wanted to deliver masks or whatever it might be during this crisis. I'm sure you have many positive stories to share with us, Mother.
Sure. Thanks for having us. Thanks, Manisha. So I wanted to share that we were actually the first company in India of any size to go work from home. It was March 5th. One of our employees returned from his honeymoon in Italy, I believe, which had a spike in cases in February, and then he tested positive. He had only been into the office for a few hours. It wasn't even our main office, but that just as a precaution, we decided to shut down all 7 of our offices in the Delhi region. And within a couple of hours, send about 6,000 to 7,000 people home. On the other hand, we're a payments company. But by the way, we were hoping to come back in about 10 days. That was the plan. We'll sanitize all our offices and come back in 10 days. We haven't really reopened for the last 9 months. We have all been nearly 100% work from home. One of the tricky things about being a payments company is that obviously everyone needs to be hard at work, but as a payments company, you cannot take a day off. You cannot take a minute off. You cannot take a second off. Payments still have to continue. So all of the things that we were doing from work from while we were in the office had to continue completely uninterrupted, and in fact, in some cases at a higher scale when we went work from home, right? So all the business continuity and everything else had to kick in right away, right? We couldn't say that, okay, we'll pick this up in 3 days' time. Let's just pause everything for now. So that's on the sort of professional side. I agree with Kevin. One of the big takeaways from this has been that I think we're slightly more structured as a company. The communication within the company has gone up dramatically, right? So we used to have like, these town halls and so on. It was always a bit of a challenge. Now we have every Friday we have a town hall where people, the format of it has evolved, but people come and share, what's happened in their businesses. HR comes and shares certain things. So whether it's our office in Delhi or Bangalore or Toronto, all of them have exactly the same amount of information on the big things that matter to the company. And I think that does make a lot of people feel more connected to the company. So I think that is a positive. On the personal side, I live in Mumbai. Our head office is Delhi. I used to travel every single week, right? It's for the last 4 years, I've taken multiple flights every single week, which is not unique, but pretty extreme way of living. For the first 7 months of COVID, I did not take a flight. It was very unusual for me. I was very positive because I could have meals with my wife and children. I wanted to add one other aspect to something that we're quite proud of, which is as soon as COVID started, we started to think about what are the things that Paytm can do, given that we are in 35 cities in the country with our employees. We also have merchants all over the country. And we really picked 2 or 3 big topics. One was to collect money for charitable causes. We never thought that the absolute amount of money would be a needle mover, but one of the opportunities that we had was in the very early days to make millions of people feel engaged with the cause, right? So the absolute amount of money is tiny compared to what, for example, governments and large NGOs spend. It was $20 million odd. But it is about getting those millions of people engaged, because when you open the app and you see that you can donate to this cause, and you donate, even if it's a few dollars, you feel connected to somebody else's pain and somebody else's troubles. And that we thought was important. The second thing that we started to do after some of the lockdown got relaxed is just use a lot of this network that we have to do things like distribute food, in April, May, getting masks and PPE kits and all of those were also a challenge. So could we use our network and our merchants and our partners to distribute those things, particularly in places where these things were hard to get to and hard to distribute. So that's something that we focus on quite a lot. And we also have an e-commerce business that has a lot of logistics network all over the country. So we try to use that as well to get to the particularly remote places in the country. So that's something that we were quite impressed by how the organization came together. Every few days, there would be people who would be doing things that we would come to know of, which were not top-down, right? Most of this was not top-down. Most of this was people saying, hey, I'm in this place, I can manage my work, but on weekends, can I use some of company's resources and network to try to make a difference? And that was very positive feedback for us.
Well, that sounds great. And it's wonderful to see how we leverage a network that we have to do something that we thought we would never have to do before. And on that note, I'm going to take it back to you, Gianfranco. So here you are, you oversee a number of regions across the world. And I'm sure that you see cultural differences in the way that people respond to a crisis. But looking forward, I'm thinking about connectivity. Now, I have to admit here, I had lots of notes about all the things that we would talk about, but as I listen to you all, so there are some key themes that are emerging. One is not just the way we work, it's also our attitude to work that's changing. Gianfranco, from your perspective, what will be some of the key measures that you will implement as a leader to assist people across all of these cultures that you oversee in a future world where there will be more flexibility, there will be more remote working, and there will have to be a gear shift in their minds?
There are many things, Manisha, that we're thinking of and we are implementing. It is true that something that works well in Japan is not necessarily replicable in Australia or in Brazil. So there are elements that are specific country by country. This has been the case in the past and will continue to be the case in the future. But there are also elements in common that I want to focus on. One in particular is that one consequence of remote working is that we have to completely rethink the notion of belonging, the spirit of belonging to an organization. Because if I'm working from home, day in and day out, frankly, what is the empathy, the emotional bond, the bond in general that I can develop with my own company, with my own employer? And so this is quite important, and this is why we are putting a lot of emphasis on what is the purpose that we have and what we want to be known for, what is our identity, who we are, because this is something that will create a common platform, a common way for our 500,000 plus employees around the world to come together and feel they are part of something that they like and they are proud of. And so our purpose as a company is to deliver on the promise of technology and human ingenuity. And the idea here is every time we can combine technology and human ingenuity, something good happens. Something good happens because we can find solutions for clients that are more sustainable, more green, more effective, safer, depending on the industries, create more loyalty, more ways of identifying products that are tailored for specific markets rather than others. But this idea of having more than 500,000 people who have their own human ingenuity that is combined with and augmented by technology is a very strong unifying message and a way to bring together people and keep them part of an organization that is inevitably becoming more and more virtual every day. And I think this is something that we see powerful, and it's inevitable that we will have to deal with this notion of more digital ways to connect to each other. Good news for technology companies. We are a technology company ourselves, but that implies to rethink ourselves in a substantial way.
So I'm really glad that you've just distinguished that we were talking about great news for a technology company, but there are other industries, of course, that might have a future that looks slightly different. And also you raised the issue there of sustainability, which we must, of course, talk about. There have been rather dire warnings coming from the United Nations over the picture for sustainability and what we as human beings are doing to our planet. Bhairavi, I want to go to you because, of course, you're in a remote location. You have teams in other places. How do you address these issues, particularly when we're talking about logistics business? We're talking about people who have to go out of offices. We're not talking about office space culture. We're not necessarily talking about something that you can do from home. How do you coordinate all of that? And what are your plans for making sure that you can keep on improving?
I think first and foremost, it entails accepting that certain things have changed and shifted. And it's important to be able to communicate that openly and as clearly as possible with everyone involved. So that individuals and teams can make decisions based on priorities, personal as well as professional. And I think companies, if we look through the last year who have done that well, have reaped the benefits. And companies who are struggling are the ones who did not upfront leave those options on table for their employees. So I think that's very, very important, first and foremost. I think what's also important is to realize that there are certain functions that can't go offline, and therefore truck has to be loaded. It's not going to be loaded by a robot, not just yet. And so, how are you going to really make sure that the well-being and health of the employees is not compromised whilst they perform their work? And in that aspect, a lot of automation, artificial intelligence, IoT tools, we have been able to deploy, really use technology to make sure workplaces and work functions and processes become more and more safe, and are able to sort of pronounce risk levels, depending on what kind of team had interacted. It could be a boy who went for a delivery of a parcel to a house, and suddenly now that particular consignee has tested COVID positive. I mean, what do you do in such a circumstance? How do you isolate people? And therefore, you have to rework processes, and you have to imagine a new normal. You have to live it, and you have to also be open to the fact that you may go wrong, and that you may implement something for a week and it may completely backfire, and you may have to go back to the drawing table far more frequently than you were used to. And I think some of these things are very, very important when you work in a new situation with new dynamics. And as far as teams of multiple locations are concerned, as part of our business, we always have teams in multiple locations. And, there are ways to keep teams, keep people connected when they are working in remote locations as well, something we've done over the years. And so that's something that is built into the training, the culture, the induction, the regular HR processes that you put in to make sure that, a team in a distant corner in the country, a 5-people office doesn't feel disconnected from the head office in a particular other part of the country. So yes, those are challenges, but those challenges we've dealt with before. I think the new challenges are more about the fact that how do you really keep it all together and make sure that as new variables come up every single day, you are ready to deal with them collectively, keeping in mind that human well-being should be at the center. And I think that's a shift from human productivity oriented workplaces that we had so all gotten used to. And I think that's a very major shift in the work culture, work processes, and the vision for what workplaces would be.
Yeah, and certainly given what Kevin was saying earlier, I think that's, we're yet again shining the spotlight on this, aren't we, as a major area of consideration for businesses as they move forward and they think about how they look after their workforces, right? With that, Kevin, let's bring it back to you. Let's talk about the gig economy, because of course, this is something that comes up a lot when we talk about companies like Gojek and we talk about the transportation industry. So it's a number that, the global gig economy boasting $296.7 billion US in gross volume. That's a number that's expected to reach $455 billion US by 2023. What do we do with figures like that? How do we plan as business leaders, as entrepreneurs? How do we plan for a workforce that might tip towards the gig worker far more, especially when we have a whole new way, not just of working, a new way of being paid, sole proprietorships, just a completely different mindset?
Manisha, it's something I mentioned last year at this conference, and it's worth repeating that the context of the informal sector in Southeast Asia and probably parts of South Asia and maybe other parts of the world as well is very different from how one should view it in a developed economy. And it's important to note that for many developing economies, the so-called informal sector is actually larger than the formal sector. And in reality, the gig economy, I would say for almost all of these situations, have dramatically improved the productivity and the quality of life for the informal economy. I think if you ask any company in this space in developing markets, you will hear many stories of very long waiting lists or very high demand for informal workers to enter these type of platforms. And I think it's important to note that, you know, oftentimes when we talk about this narrative, we don't differentiate between what type of markets are we talking about. But specifically, you know, for us, I do think that one of the most exciting opportunities, either as a provider of technology or as a small business entrepreneur today, is the existence of these platforms. Because, you know, from our perspective as a technology company, it's very, very exciting and actually very, very uplifting to know that there's this great combination of both opportunity and social impact that's just, you know, kind of just waiting in front of in many of these developing markets. You know, our drivers and our merchants come from what you would call the bottom part of the economic pyramid, almost all of them. And for us, you know, our business goals are very much aligned with their business and life goals, because we only take somewhere around 20% of the revenue that they are making. So, you know, for us, it's great that there's this huge, relatively underutilized either individuals or businesses that, you know, by providing access to technology, providing access to market through technology, we can actually, you know, build a very large platform that increases their business. Now, on the flip side, you know, on the micro entrepreneurs perspective, I think that the future is largely going to look like a common. There should be a very fluid marketplace between time, some asset value, that at any given time you have multiple options to basically put your time and your asset values on any kind of online marketplace and maximize the returns on that time or on that asset value. And even if you're, like in our case, even if you're just a man or a woman with a motorcycle, you know, that is seriously monetizable time and asset value. And obviously the e-commerce sites and e-commerce marketplaces are allowing that for small retailers. You know, our food delivery service is allowing that for small merchants. 85% of the restaurants on our platform are actually single outlet mom and pop businesses. So I think the future in terms of, you know, this space is actually very exciting in our part of the world, because, you know, companies like ours are just getting started.
Right.
I think the narrative might be slightly different if you go to more developed economies, but I think, you know, speaking from our perspective, it's I would say overwhelmingly positive.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we have a huge expansion in that sense, and also a lot more inclusion in a way we've perhaps not seen before.
Absolutely.
We have less than 10 minutes left, so I would like to course through, if I can. I want to take it to you, Mother, and it's a very simple question. 5G, how is that going to change the way we work? And what is that going to do to your business that will facilitate payments in a way that will change the way people will work?
You know, there'll be a bunch of software and applications that will be built on top of it. 5G is going to create more bandwidth and more dimensions of innovation. But I think there's plenty of technology that exists. I wasn't there last year, but if Kevin said the future is software, actually the future is software. You can build plenty of software on top of existing infrastructure and existing technologies that can change lives of people for the better. So I think the broader theme is whether software is catching up and great software is being built on top of existing technologies. So I'm not trying to dodge the 5G question, but I think regardless of the penetration of 5G over the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, depending on the country that you're in, software is actually the most powerful innovation force going forward. One of the things that I just wanted to add in terms of social impact of both technology as well as COVID-related impact is, you know, internally we've kind of gone location agnostic in terms of hiring. So you could live in any part of the country or perhaps elsewhere. And for now, we're saying, listen, we don't know 6, 12 months from now whether you'll be work from home or work back in the office. I'm not committing to you that we will not have an office type infrastructure. We just have to roll with this. But at the moment, if you're joining Paytm, I don't care whether you live in Goa or Patna or Nagpur or anywhere else, and your boss sits somewhere else. We'll just form groups of team. It's all virtual anyway. And we hope that that makes it easier for people to work, right? It's not always easy to work from home, but hopefully employment opportunities of this type can percolate much deeper into the country due to the adoption of technology and COVID-related catalysts. And people who had to make trade-offs between, hey, do I leave my parents who might need my help to take another job elsewhere? That can solve itself. This is particularly important for women, I hate to say, who often do have many obligations that they juggle with, and having to move to another location is not always an option. So I think this could have that positive impact, which we're very much looking forward to.
Well, look, we have less than 5 minutes left. So what I want to do is course through all of you and get some advice, actually. So I have 3 children, and I often talk to them about what they should be learning at school and how they should prepare them for the future of work. So as briefly as you can, each of you, I would love to know from your perspectives, what should we all be telling our children about how to prepare themselves for their future world? Let's begin with you, Gianfranco.
I think 2 words, Manisha: technology and green. So how the next generations will have to deal with technology and green in a way which is different from our generation and the generation before. So learning about how to deal with technology, how to bring human ingenuity to technology, and how to deal with a green environment and a greener society are the 2 things that will be different, and our children will find when they are ready to become when they will be adult.
Yeah, definitely collective challenges for us all. Bhairavi, how about you?
Well, I would say 3 things. One, remember that being human is a very special gift. And so, humanity is going to actually be the future. 2, remember that humanity in partnership with nature and partnership with technology, and how that permutation combination works out in different applications in personal as well as public life is going to dictate their experience. And 3rd, I think that they will need to be ready to operate and work and live more collectively than individually, while of course experiencing things individually, is, I think, what I would say to them, that the future is human and in partnership and in collaborative manner of work.
Okay, so before I get to Kevin and Mother, I just want to warn all 4 of you that I will come to you just before the session ends and ask you for 1 word that describes what you believe the future of work is. So just think about that while we get through our responses from Kevin and Mother. We'll flip the switch. Mother, I want to start with you. So what should we be telling our children?
I think 2020 is the year of the COVID, unfortunately. So COVID-related themes. One is technology. Imagine if this has happened 5 years earlier, we would not have that kind of connectivity which allows us to be connected in the way we have been in 2020. So technology-led solutions, almost every problem has a better technology-led solution than not, almost every problem. And the second is adaptability. It's just, there'll be pace of change of almost everything is faster, whether it's because of technology, because we're more connected as a civilization, and just being able to adapt to pace of change, having that open mind, curiosity, first principles, problem solving, that's the differentiator.
Yeah, and it's interesting because these qualities that you talk about, these can't just be taught in rote learning, can they? These are qualities that are experiential. Kevin, in speaking of experiential, you've certainly experienced it as an entrepreneur. What would you be telling the future generation about how to prepare for the world of work in the later 21st century?
I largely will be about creativity, freedom, actually. It's creativity in the sense that One, a lot of non-creative things will be automated. But also the fact that, this, I don't know if how many people are aware of this whole no-code movement in the technology space. It's basically allowing a lot of the things that you would at one point require, software engineers to do, to actually be done by non-technical people. So the premium on creativity is likely going to increase a lot.
Okay, Kevin,
freedom,
I'm going to jump in. Freedom.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Yes.
I was going to
Yes.
jump in. So I'm going to take freedom as your final word. We've got 15 seconds left. I'm going to take that as your word. Mother, what's your word?
I would say change.
And Bhairavi?
Creativity.
Gianfranco?
Coming last is more difficult. I say sustainability.
Well, sadly, that's it. We are out of time. I'm Manisha Tank. It's been a great pleasure for me to host this panel on the future of work. I just want to thank our panelists, Gianfranco Casati, thank you so much, the CEO of Accenture in growth markets. Bhairavi Jani, you have a long title, Bhairavi. I'm not going to go through it, but thank you so much. You are the director at the SCA group of companies, and I hope for this that will be sufficient. Kevin, you are the co-founder and co-CEO at Gojek. Thank you so much, Kevin Alui. And finally, Diora, who is the president at Paytm. You're over in India. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manisha and panel. The future of work definitely hangs on as an open question. While we managed to gather strong insights from that panel, we probably are still trying to pinpoint exactly what the workplace of the future will look like.